The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a silver city. Its towers stretched for miles in every direction, home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. Today, something new was happening. For the first time in 300 years, a new species had arrived for testing. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the window of the human transport ship, watching the station grow larger as they approached. Her hands shook slightly, but she tried to hide it. Behind her, 23 other humans waited quietly. They were the best Earth had to offer: soldiers, scientists, athletes, and thinkers. Each one represented humanity's hope for a good place in the galaxy. "Look at the size of that thing," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's lead scientist. "Our entire moon could fit inside one of those docking bays." Sarah nodded but said nothing. She had studied the files about the Galactic Confederation for months. The Alliance controlled thousands of star systems and dozens of alien species. Some had been part of it for over 10,000 years. Now humanity wanted to join them. The docking process took 2 hours. When the airlock finally opened, Sarah got her first look at real aliens. The creature waiting for them stood 9 feet tall and looked like it was made of living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow waves of blue and green. This was Ambassador Keltar of the Zethkari Empire. "Welcome, humans," the creature said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am here to guide you through the assessment process. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls showed moving pictures of alien worlds, purple oceans under twin suns, floating cities made of gold metal, forests of trees that glowed in the dark. Sarah saw other aliens too. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others moved like liquid mercury, but held tools with invisible hands. A few looked almost human except for their silver skin and completely black eyes. "The Assessment Council has been preparing for your arrival," Ambassador Keltar explained as they walked. "We have studied your species from a distance for 50 years. Your basic biology, your technology level, your social structures. Today we will test what makes your people special." They entered a huge room with a dome ceiling that showed stars. In the center sat 5 beings at a curved table. Sarah recognized some of them from her studies. The tall crystal being was High Judge Zarthek of the Zethkari. Next to him sat First Speaker Vrexka, who looked like a praying mantis the size of a horse but with skin that shifted colors. The other 3 were species Sarah had never seen before. "Humans of Earth," High Judge Zarthek spoke, his voice filling the room without echo. "You stand before the Assessment Council of the Galactic Confederation. We will now begin the tests that will determine your species' classification and role in our alliance." The testing began immediately. The aliens had built special rooms for each type of test. In the first room, they measured physical strength. The strongest human, a weightlifter named Tom Bradley, could lift 800 pounds. The alien watching him, a creature that looked like a walking tree, seemed disappointed. "Your species' maximum strength is quite limited," it noted, writing something on a device that floated in the air. "The average Corvin child can lift 3 times that amount." Next came tests of natural abilities. The aliens checked if humans could read minds, see through walls, or control objects with their thoughts. A few humans showed tiny amounts of these gifts, but nothing impressive. Dr. Webb could sometimes guess what someone was thinking, but only if he knew them well. A young woman named Lisa Park could make small objects move slightly, but it gave her bad headaches. The technology tests went badly too. Earth's best computers seemed like toys compared to alien devices. Human weapons were simple chemical explosives and metal bullets. The aliens had guns that fired pure energy, and ships that could travel between stars in days instead of years. "Your technological development is approximately 4,000 years behind the galactic standard," announced First Speaker Vrexka, her colors shifting to what Sarah guessed meant disappointment. "Your manufacturing capabilities are primitive. Your energy sources are inefficient. They tested human bodies for natural defenses. Unlike many alien species, humans had no armor plating, no poisonous spines, no ability to change color or become invisible. They couldn't survive in space without suits or breathe underwater for more than a few minutes. No natural weapon systems, noted another judge. No environmental adaptation beyond basic temperate climates. Highly vulnerable to radiation, temperature extremes, and atmospheric changes. The day dragged on with test after test. Each one showed humanity lacking in some way. The aliens weren't mean about it, but they seemed increasingly bored. Sarah could see in their expressions, or what she thought were expressions, that humans were not impressive. Late in the day, something strange happened. During a break between tests, one of the alien technicians dropped a complex device that broke into dozens of pieces. The creature made sounds that were probably cursing in its language. Without being asked, 3 humans immediately knelt down and started helping pick up the pieces. Tom Bradley, the weightlifter, carefully gathered the smallest components. Dr. Webb started sorting them by what looked like function. Lisa Park noticed that some pieces seemed to fit together and began trying to rebuild sections of the device. The alien technician stopped making upset sounds and watched them work. Other aliens gathered around to see what was happening. Within 10 minutes, the humans had not only collected all the pieces, but had also figured out how most of the device worked. "Interesting," said first speaker Vrexka, her color shifting to something brighter. "They did not ask for reward. They did not ask for permission. They simply helped." "Pack behavior," noted High Judge Zarthek. "We observed this in their historical records. They form cooperative groups even with unknown individuals." But this small moment of interest didn't change the final results. After 3 days of testing, the Assessment Council reached their decision. All the humans gathered in the main chamber to hear their fate. "Humans of Earth," High Judge Zarthek announced, "the Assessment Council has completed its evaluation. Your species shows limited physical capabilities, minimal psychic potential, and below-average technological development. However, you demonstrate acceptable intelligence and unusual social cooperation." Sarah's heart sank. She could hear the "but" coming. "Therefore, the Council grants humanity membership in the Galactic Confederation as a Class 9 auxiliary species. You will be assigned 1 star system for colonization, and will provide support services to more advanced species. These services include waste management, agricultural labor, basic maintenance, and simple manufacturing tasks." The room fell silent. Class 9 was the second lowest classification. Sarah had read about other Class 9 species. They were basically galactic janitors. "You will have full protection under Confederation law," the High Judge continued. "Your people will be safe, fed, and housed. Many species have found great satisfaction in auxiliary roles." Ambassador Keltar approached them after the formal ceremony ended. "Do not be disappointed," he said gently. "The galaxy has room for all kinds of beings. Your people will find their place." Sarah looked out the window at the stars one more time before heading back to their ship. In a few days, they would return to Earth with news that would disappoint billions of people. Humanity had reached for the stars and been told they were only good enough to clean them. But as she watched the alien ships moving around the station with their graceful, predictable patterns, Sarah found herself thinking about something else. In all their tests, no one had asked humans what they thought was important. No one had asked what humans were good at that couldn't be measured in a laboratory. Maybe that would matter someday. Maybe it wouldn't. But as their ship pulled away from Nexus Prime, Sarah Chen decided that humanity's story in the galaxy was just beginning. 15 years had passed since the assessment. Earth had changed completely. Giant ships now carried millions of humans to their new homes in the Kepler system, the single star system the Confederation had given them. Most people had accepted their fate as galactic janitors, but they made the best of it. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to commander, walked through the corridors of New Geneva Station, humanity's largest space habitat. Outside the window, she could see 3 human colonies on different planets. Each world bustled with activity as humans did the jobs the galaxy needed, but other species didn't want to do. "Morning report, Commander," said Lieutenant James Rodriguez, handing her a datapad. James had been a young soldier during the assessment. Now he ran the station's security department. "Thanks, James. How are our new waste processing contracts coming along?" "Better than expected. The Vrex worlds are sending us 3 times more recycling than last year. Apparently, human workers are the only ones who can sort their quantum waste without getting sick." Sarah smiled slightly. Humans had discovered they could handle many jobs that made other species ill or uncomfortable. Alien food that was poisonous to most species was just spicy to humans. Radiation levels that killed other beings just made humans feel tired. Chemical waste that dissolved alien skin just irritated human workers. What about the agricultural projects? Excellent news there too. The farming colony on Kepler 2 just had their best harvest ever. The Mentari are paying top credits for human-grown food. They say it tastes better than anything their own farmers can produce. This was another surprise. Human farmers worked differently than aliens. Most alien species farmed using advanced technology and computer programs. Humans still used their hands, talked to their plants, and made small changes based on feelings rather than data. For some reason, this produced better crops. Sarah walked to her office and found a message waiting from Ambassador Keltar. The crystal being had become a good friend over the years. His message was an invitation to a diplomatic gathering on Nexus Prime. 3 days later, Sarah found herself back on the massive space station where humanity had been judged so long ago. The place looked the same, but Sarah noticed things she had missed before. The cleaning robots that moved through the halls were built by humans. The air recycling systems had human-designed improvements. Even the beautiful light displays in the main corridors used human programming. Sarah, Ambassador Keltar's voice rang like music as he approached. "It is wonderful to see you again. How are your people adapting?" "Better than anyone expected," Sarah replied honestly. "We're actually running out of workers. Every month, more species want to hire humans for jobs we didn't even know existed." They walked together toward the diplomatic quarters. Along the way, Keltar pointed out changes to the station. "Do you see those maintenance workers there? They are Thaxians, but they are using human-designed tools. Your people have a gift for making things work better." "We just like to fix things," Sarah said with a shrug. "Yes, but more than that. You see problems differently." Last month, a Corvin engineering team spent 6 months trying to solve a power distribution problem on one of their mining worlds. A human technician fixed it in 2 days by rerouting the power through the station's waste heat system. The Corvins never thought to use something they considered garbage. They entered a large meeting room where representatives from dozens of species had gathered. Sarah recognized many of them now. The tall, proud Zethkari with their crystal bodies, the insect-like Vrex with their color-changing skin, the massive Corvins who could manipulate gravity with their minds, the ghostly Mentari who spoke in whispers that appeared directly in your thoughts. But Sarah also noticed something else. In almost every group there was at least one human. They weren't there as equals. They were translators, technical assistants, or cultural advisors. But they were there. The discussion today concerns the growing tensions with the Korthak hegemony, Ambassador Keltar explained as they took their seats. They have been expanding aggressively into neutral space. Some fear they may soon challenge the Confederation directly. Sarah had heard of the Korthak. They were a warrior species from the galaxy's outer rim. Each Korthak stood over 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and claws that could cut through steel. They could regenerate from almost any wound and lived for combat. The Confederation had peaceful relations with them, but everyone knew the Korthak believed in taking what they wanted by force. As the meeting progressed, Sarah listened to the alien diplomats discuss strategy. Each species approached the problem differently. The Zethkari wanted to build stronger defenses. The Vrex believed superior technology could deter any attack. The Corvins thought their gravity manipulation abilities made them unbeatable. The Mentari suggested using telepathic networks to confuse Korthak commanders. What struck Sarah was how each species only thought about their own abilities. The Zethkari never considered using Vrex technology. The Corvins didn't think about combining their powers with Mentari telepathy. Each group was planning to fight alone, even though they were supposed to be allies. During a break, Sarah found herself talking with Dr. Webb, who now served as Earth's chief scientific liaison. He had been attending these meetings for years. "Marcus, have you noticed something odd about how these species work together?" "You mean how they don't actually work together?" He replied quietly. "I've been watching this for 15 years, Sarah. They call themselves allies, but they never really combine their strengths. Each species has its own military, its own technology, its own strategies. But why? They're all supposed to be on the same side. I think it's because they're all so specialized. Each species evolved to be really good at one thing. The Zethkari manipulate energy, so they think every problem should be solved with energy weapons. The Corvins control gravity, so they believe gravity is the answer to everything. They can't imagine doing things any other way." Sarah thought about this as the meeting resumed. She watched a Vrex admiral explain a defensive strategy that relied entirely on technological superiority. Then a Corvin general presented a plan that used only gravity-based weapons. Each plan was probably good, but none of them used the strengths of other species. After the meeting, Sarah walked through the station's commercial district. Here, things were different. She saw Zethkari merchants selling energy crystals to Vrex engineers. Mentari artists worked with Corvan craftspeople to create sculptures that floated and whispered. Thaxian armorers traded with species from across the galaxy, and everywhere there were humans. Human traders who helped species that couldn't communicate with each other. Human mechanics who could fix alien technology that broke down. Human cooks who made food that different species could all enjoy. "Excuse me?" said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see a young Vrex, her colors shifting nervously between blue and yellow. "Are you Commander Chen, the human diplomat?" "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "My name is Krixva. I work in the station's communication center. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" 3 months ago, we had a crisis. Our quantum communication array started failing, and we couldn't reach half the Confederation worlds. My supervisors tried everything, but nothing worked. Then one of your human technicians suggested something nobody had thought of. Sarah waited for her to continue. He said maybe the problem wasn't with our equipment. Maybe it was with how we were using it. He showed us that we were sending too much data too fast. When we slowed down and sent smaller packets, everything worked perfectly. We had been trying to fix the wrong thing for weeks. Krixva's colors shifted to warm gold, which Sarah had learned meant gratitude. My supervisors were embarrassed that a Class 9 auxiliary species had solved a problem our best engineers couldn't handle. But I think your people see things we miss because you're not experts in any one thing. You look at the whole picture. That night, Sarah sat in her quarters thinking about what Krixva had said. Humans weren't the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species in the galaxy. But maybe that was actually an advantage. Because they weren't specialists, they could see connections that specialists missed. She thought about the diplomatic meeting earlier. All those species with incredible abilities, but each thinking only about their own strengths. If the Korthak really did attack, would the Confederation's traditional approach be enough? Sarah opened her communication terminal and began writing a message to Earth. She wasn't sure if anyone would listen to ideas from a Class 9 species, but she had some thoughts about cooperation that might be worth sharing. Outside her window, the lights of Nexus Prime sparkled against the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, the Korthak hegemony was growing stronger and more aggressive. Sarah hoped the galaxy would never need to test whether human ideas about teamwork could make a difference. But deep down, she suspected that day might come sooner than anyone expected. The first attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. Commander Sarah Chen was drinking coffee in her office when the emergency alarm started screaming throughout New Geneva Station. Red lights flashed in every corridor as the communication systems crackled to life. "All personnel to emergency stations," announced the station's AI in multiple languages. "We are receiving distress calls from 17 Confederation worlds." This is not a drill. Sarah ran to the command center where Lieutenant James Rodriguez was already coordinating with other human colonies. The main screen showed a map of the galaxy with 17 red dots blinking urgently. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked, still trying to process what she was seeing. "It's the Korthak," James replied grimly. "They've launched simultaneous attacks on 17 different star systems. All of them are major Confederation worlds." Dr. Webb burst into the command center, his face pale. "Sarah, I just got off a call with the Vrex High Command. They're saying the Korthak forces are like nothing they've ever seen. Organized, brutal, and completely unstoppable. Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Korthak hegemony had struck with precision and overwhelming force. Their warriors were everything the intelligence reports had said and worse. Standing over 8 feet tall with natural armor and regenerative abilities, they could heal from wounds that would kill any other species. Their claws could tear through the strongest metals, and their battle rage made them nearly immune to pain. But it wasn't just their physical abilities that made them dangerous. The Korthak had studied Confederation military tactics for years. They knew exactly how each species fought and had prepared counters for everything. When the Zethkari deployed their famous energy weapons, the Korthak warriors simply absorbed the energy into their armor and became stronger. When the Vrex sent their advanced attack drones, the Korthak hacked them and turned them against their creators. The Corvans tried to use their gravity manipulation to crush the invaders. But the Korthak had developed personal shields that deflected gravitational attacks. "It's like they planned for everything," Dr. Webb said, as he read another battle report. "The Mentari tried to confuse them with telepathic attacks, but the Korthak minds are too disciplined. They just ignored the mental intrusions and kept fighting." Sarah watched the tactical displays with growing horror. Each red dot on the map represented millions of beings. As the hours passed, more dots turned from red to black, meaning all communication had been lost. 3 days after the attacks began, refugee ships started arriving in human space. Sarah had never seen so many different species looking terrified. Proud Zethkari ambassadors sat next to wounded Vrek soldiers. Corvan civilians floated next to Mentari children, whose telepathic abilities had been overwhelmed by the violence they had witnessed. Commander Chen called Ambassador Keltar as he disembarked from a damaged Zethkari ship. His crystal body was cracked in several places and his usual musical voice sounded strained. "I bring greetings from what remains of the Confederation Council." Sarah met him at the docking bay along with James and Marcus. The ambassador looked exhausted in a way she had never seen before. "Keltar, what's the real situation out there?" "Worse than the reports suggest," he replied sadly. "The Korthak are not just attacking randomly. They have a plan. They strike the most important worlds first, capture the infrastructure intact, then use our own facilities to launch attacks on neighboring systems." "How is that possible?" Marcus asked. "The Confederation has the most advanced military in the galaxy." "That is exactly the problem," Keltar said. "Each of our species has spent thousands of years perfecting their own methods of warfare. The Zethkari focus on energy manipulation. The Vreks rely on technology. The Corvans use gravitational force. The Mentari employ telepathic tactics." Sarah was beginning to understand. "And the Korthak studied all of those methods." "Precisely. They know exactly how we fight because we have always fought the same way. Worse, our species never truly learned to fight together. Oh, we call ourselves allies, but in battle, each species commands its own forces and uses its own strategies." James pulled up a tactical display showing the Korthak advance. "Look at this pattern. They're not just winning battles. They're destroying entire fleets without taking significant losses." "The Korthak fight as one force," Keltar explained. "Every warrior knows what every other warrior is doing. They adapt to our tactics faster than we can change them. Meanwhile, our forces spend more time coordinating with each other than fighting the enemy." Over the following weeks, the situation grew worse. More refugee ships arrived daily, bringing tales of incredible Korthak victories. The warrior species had captured 6 major shipyards, 3 research facilities, and 2 entire star systems. They were using captured Confederation technology to build new weapons and ships. Sarah found herself coordinating refugee efforts across all of human space. It was strange work for someone whose species had been classified as galactic janitors, but humans seemed naturally good at managing complex logistics. They could organize food distribution for species with completely different dietary needs, arrange housing for beings who required different atmospheric conditions, and somehow keep everyone calm despite the chaos. "You know what I find odd?" James said one evening as they reviewed supply reports. "We're housing refugees from dozens of species, but they're all getting along pretty well." Sarah looked around the temporary housing areas they had set up. He was right. Zethkari families were sharing common areas with Vrex engineers. Corvan children were playing games with young Mentari. Thaxian merchants were trading stories with species Sarah couldn't even identify. "It's because they're all scared," Marcus suggested. "Fear makes people cooperative." "Maybe," Sarah replied, "but I think there's more to it. Look how our people are managing this. We're not just keeping them alive. We're actually helping them work together." She watched a human social worker mediating a dispute between a Zethkari family and their Vrex neighbors. The problem was simple. The Zethkari needed more light to stay healthy, but the bright energy they produced hurt Vrex eyes. Within 10 minutes, the human had helped them find a solution that worked for both families. "We do this naturally," Sarah realized. "We see different groups and immediately start thinking about how to make them work together." 3 months after the first attacks, Ambassador Keltar brought devastating news. The Confederation Council had met in emergency session on one of the few remaining secure worlds. "The Korthak have captured over 40 star systems," he announced to the assembled human leaders. "They show no signs of slowing down. Worse, they are beginning to conscript populations from conquered worlds. Their forces grow stronger with each victory." "What about Confederation reinforcements?" Sarah asked. Keltar's colors dimmed to almost transparent. "There are no reinforcements. Half our military is destroyed. The other half is scattered across the galaxy trying to defend their own homeworlds."
Each species is fighting alone and each species is losing. So what happens now?
The Council has made a desperate decision. They are calling for every member species to contribute whatever forces they can to a final defense. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. He paused and looked directly at Sarah. Even auxiliary species. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. You want human ships? Our military? We want everything you have. The Council knows that human forces are small and your technology is primitive, but we need every advantage we can find. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Our entire military is maybe 50 ships and 10,000 soldiers. What difference could that make against the Korthak? Probably none, Keltar admitted. But we are out of options. The Korthak will reach the core worlds within 6 months. After that, the Confederation will cease to exist. That night, Sarah stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at the refugee ships docked around their small fleet. Somewhere out there, the most powerful military alliance in galactic history was falling apart. Species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years were being defeated by warriors who fought with claws and teeth, and now they wanted help from humanity, the species that had been judged too weak to matter. Sarah thought about the past 15 years. Humans had found their place in the galaxy by doing the jobs nobody else wanted to do. They had learned to work with every species, to solve problems that specialists couldn't handle, to see connections that others missed. Maybe that wasn't enough to stop the Korthak. Maybe nothing was enough. But as Sarah watched human workers helping refugee families from dozens of different species, she realized that humanity might have one advantage that nobody had measured in those long-ago tests. They knew how to turn strangers into allies. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to learn. Admiral James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human flagship Determination, watching the largest military gathering in galactic history assemble around Kepler Station. In just 2 weeks, humanity had transformed from refugee coordinators to military commanders, not because they had asked for the role, but because someone had to take it. Final count, Admiral, reported Captain Lisa Park, who had been the young woman with telekinetic abilities during the assessment years ago. Now she served as Fleet Operations Coordinator. We have ships from 43 different species. Total vessels, 837. James nodded grimly. It sounded impressive until you realized that 6 months ago, the Confederation had controlled over 50,000 military ships. The Korthak had destroyed or captured most of them. What about unified command structure? He asked. That's complicated, sir. Each species insists on commanding their own forces. The Zethkari refuse to take orders from the Vrex. The Corvins won't coordinate with the Mentari. The Thaxians don't trust anyone who doesn't have natural armor. This was the problem that had been plaguing the Confederation from the beginning. Every species was used to fighting in their own way, using their own tactics, following their own leaders. The idea of true cooperation was foreign to them. James activated the communication system that connected him to every ship in the fleet. This is Admiral Rodriguez. All species commanders, please report to the Determination for Strategic Planning. 2 hours later, the main conference room was packed with alien officers. James looked around the table at beings who represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Crystal Zethkari generals whose bodies pulsed with barely contained energy. Insectoid Vrex admirals with skin that shifted through complex color patterns. Massive Corvin commanders who floated slightly above their chairs. Ghostly Mentari strategists whose thoughts whispered at the edges of everyone's minds. Before we begin, James announced, I want to show you something. He activated a holographic display that showed the recent Korthak victories. Battle after battle where Confederation forces had been destroyed despite having superior numbers and technology. Notice the pattern. James continued. In every case, our forces fought exactly as expected. Zethkari energy attacks from long range. Vrex technological superiority and precision strikes. Corvin gravitational manipulation. Mentari telepathic coordination. The Korthak were ready for all of it. General Thekmore of the Zethkari spoke first, his voice like crystalline bells. Are you suggesting our proven battle strategies are ineffective? I'm saying they're predictable, James replied. The Korthak have studied us for years. They know exactly how each species fights. They've prepared counters for everything we do. Admiral Vrextol's colors shifted to aggressive red. Human tactics are primitive. Your weapons are chemical explosives. Your strategies are based on ancient planetary warfare. You're right, James admitted. Our technology is thousands of years behind yours. But that might actually be an advantage. He changed the display to show human military history. Battles from Earth where weaker forces had defeated stronger enemies through unexpected tactics and cooperation between different groups. The Korthak have never fought humans in a real war, James explained. They've studied all of your species, but they don't know our methods. More importantly, they've never faced truly integrated forces. Commander Colvin of the Corvins floated higher, his massive form radiating skepticism. What do you mean by integrated forces? I mean every species working together as one unit instead of 43 separate armies. Zethkari energy weapons powered by Vrex technology, Corvin gravity manipulation guided by Mentari telepathy, Thaxian armor worn by mixed species assault teams, combined tactics that no single species would think to use. The room fell silent. James could see the alien commanders struggling with the concept. For thousands of years, each species had fought alone, even when they were allies. This is impossible, whispered strategy singer Melthara of the Mentari directly into everyone's minds. Our fighting styles are completely different. Our equipment is incompatible. Our command structures conflict. That's exactly what the Korthak are counting on. Sarah Chen's voice came from the doorway. She had been promoted to strategic coordinator and arrived with arms full of data pads. Sorry I'm late. I've been analyzing every battle the Korthak have won. She moved to the front of the room and activated her own display. Look at this. The Korthak don't just study our individual tactics. They study how we fail to work together. At the Battle of Vega 7, Zethkari forces retreated just as Vrex reinforcements arrived, because neither commander knew what the other was planning. The Korthak exploited that gap and destroyed both fleets separately. Sarah switched to another battle report. At Centauri Station, Corvin gravity manipulators accidentally interfered with Mentari telepathic networks. The confusion lasted only minutes, but it was enough for the Korthak to break through our defenses. You see the pattern, James added. We keep losing because we fight like 43 different species instead of one united force. But how can we unite forces that have never worked together? Asked General Thekmore. James smiled for the first time in weeks. That's where humans come in. For the past 15 years, we've been working with every species in the Confederation. We've learned your languages, your customs, your ways of thinking. We know how to translate between species that can't understand each other. Captain Park stepped forward with a detailed tactical plan. We propose mixed species units with human coordinators. Not human commanders, coordinators. Officers who can help different species work together while keeping their own leaders in charge. The alien commanders studied the plans with growing interest. James watched their reactions carefully. The Vrex were intrigued by the technological possibilities. The Zethkari seemed excited about combining their energy manipulation with other species' abilities. Even the proud Corvins appeared curious about gravitational tactics they had never considered. There is precedent for this, strategy singer Melthara admitted. During the refugee crisis, human coordinators successfully managed cooperation between species that normally cannot coexist. Perhaps the same principles could apply to military operations. Admiral Vrexital's colors shifted to thoughtful blue. Your species has demonstrated unusual ability to facilitate interspecies cooperation. But can this work in actual combat? There's only one way to find out, James replied. The Korthak are advancing on Kepler Station. They'll be here in 72 hours. We can either fight them the same way everyone else has fought them, or we can try something new. The vote was closer than James had hoped, but eventually, all the alien commanders agreed to try the human approach. The next 3 days were chaos as they reorganized the entire fleet according to human coordination principles. Zethkari energy specialists were paired with Vrex targeting systems and Thaxian armor. Corvin gravity manipulators worked with Mentari telepaths to create coordinated field effects. Human officers were embedded in every unit, not as leaders but as translators and coordinators who could help different species understand each other during the heat of battle. The result was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that had been designed by single species were suddenly equipped with technology from multiple civilizations. Tactics that had been used separately for thousands of years were combined into entirely new strategies. When the Korthak fleet finally arrived at Kepler Station, they found something they had never encountered before, a truly unified enemy. The battle began exactly as every other Korthak victory had started. The warrior species deployed their proven tactics, using captured Confederation technology and their knowledge of how each alien species fought. But this time was different. When the Korthak launched their standard assault on what appeared to be a Zethkari energy formation, they discovered that the ships were also equipped with Vrex cloaking devices and Corvin gravity mines. The attack that should have destroyed the enemy fleet instead scattered it, but the scattered ships immediately reformed using Mentari telepathic coordination into a formation the Korthak had never seen before. They're adapting faster than our combat algorithms can compensate, reported the Korthak battle commander to his fleet. These tactics are not in our databases. For the first time in their military history, the Korthak found themselves confused and off balance. Every move they made was countered by a combination of abilities they had never faced together. When they adapted to one species' tactics, 3 other species would combine their strengths in ways that made no sense according to traditional military doctrine. The turning point came when a mixed human-alien assault team managed to board and capture a Korthak command ship. The team included Thaxian warriors for armor and strength, Zethkari energy specialists for weapons, Virex hackers for technology, and human coordinators who kept everyone working together despite their completely different fighting styles. "This is Admiral Rodriguez to all units," James announced as the captured Korthak ship's databases were downloaded. "We have their tactical plans. They were prepared for everything except cooperation. Continue integrated assault patterns." For the first time since the Korthak expansion began, a Confederation fleet had won a major victory. More I 2 years after the Battle of Kepler Station, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the halls of the new Confederation capital on Earth. The planet that had once been considered too primitive to matter was now the center of galactic government. Outside the windows of the newly built Unity complex, ships from dozens of species came and went in patterns that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. "The morning briefing is ready, Ambassador," said her assistant, a young Vrex named Kexley, whose colors now shifted to warm yellows and greens, emotions that her species had rarely shown before working with humans. Sarah smiled at the title. From Class 9 auxiliary species to galactic ambassadors in just 17 years, the journey still felt surreal sometimes. The briefing room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, but it looked nothing like the old Confederation meetings. Instead of each species sitting separately, the delegates were mixed together. Zethkari energy specialists sat next to Mentari telepaths, comparing notes on a joint research project. Corvin engineers floated beside Vrex programmers working on shared technology. Thaxian security officers chatted with species that had been strangers to them just months ago. "Good morning, everyone," Sarah announced as she took her place at the circular table. Another human innovation that replaced the old hierarchical seating arrangements. "Let's start with the reconstruction reports." Admiral Rodriguez, now serving as Military Coordination Director, stood to present the first update. His uniform bore insignia from all the major species, representing his role as a multi-species commander. The former Korthak territories are being successfully integrated into the new Confederation structure, he reported. The interesting development is that many Korthak populations are actually requesting to remain under Confederation protection. This had been one of the most surprising outcomes of the war. After their military forces were defeated, most people expected the Korthak civilians to resist occupation. Instead, many Korthak communities had asked to join the Confederation as full members. "How is that working out?" asked High Judge Zarthek, the same Zethkari who had classified humanity as Class 9 so many years ago. His attitude toward cooperation had changed dramatically after watching integrated forces save his homeworld. "Better than anyone predicted," James replied. "It turns out that Korthak warrior culture was actually imposed by their military leadership. Most of their population were farmers, artists, and craftspeople who just wanted to live in peace. Under the new system, they're contributing their own unique strengths to multi-species communities." Dr. Webb, now Director of Interspecies Science Coordination, presented the next report. "The joint research projects are exceeding all expectations. When you combine Zethkari energy manipulation with Vrex computational power and Corvin gravitational understanding, you get completely new types of technology." He activated a holographic display showing a new type of starship. This is the first vessel designed from the ground up by multiple species working together. It's faster than anything the Vrex ever built, more powerful than Zethkari energy ships, and more maneuverable than Corvin gravity vessels. More importantly, it requires a mixed crew to operate effectively. Sarah looked around the room at the faces and other sensory organs of beings who represented hundreds of worlds. Just a few years ago, each species had been convinced that their way was the only right way. Now they were discovering that combining different approaches led to solutions none of them could have imagined alone. "What about the new assessment protocols?" she asked. This was perhaps the most important change. The old system of classifying species based on individual abilities had been completely replaced. Strategy. Singer Melthara of the Mentari responded, her thoughts flowing gently into everyone's minds. The new protocols measure cooperation potential, adaptability, and what we are calling integration coefficient, the ability to work with other species. By these standards, many previously overlooked species are proving to have tremendous value. Including humanity? Sarah asked with a slight smile. High Judge Zarthek actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Humans would be classified as a Class 1 integration species, the highest category. Your ability to facilitate cooperation between different groups is unmatched in galactic history. The meeting continued with reports from across the galaxy. The news was overwhelmingly positive. Crime rates had dropped on multi-species worlds. Scientific advancement had accelerated dramatically. Economic cooperation between former rivals was creating prosperity that no single species had ever achieved. But the most remarkable change was cultural. Species that had remained isolated for thousands of years were now eagerly learning about their neighbors. Zethkari children were studying Mentari poetry. Vrex engineers were taking lessons in Corvin gravity manipulation. Thaxian artists were creating sculptures that incorporated techniques from dozens of different traditions. After the meeting, Sarah walked to her favorite spot in the Unity complex, a garden that had been designed by representatives from every member species. Zethkari energy plants provided light for Vrex shadow flowers. Corvin floating trees created gravity-defying waterfalls that fed Mentari singing pools. Even former Korthak territories had contributed warrior flowers that bloomed only when different species worked together to tend them. Ambassador Keltar found her there, as he often did. The old crystal being had become one of humanity's strongest advocates in the new government. Contemplating the changes? He asked, his musical voice carrying notes of contentment. I was thinking about the assessment, Sarah replied. Do you remember what the council said? That humans were limited, primitive, and only suitable for auxiliary roles? I remember. I also remember thinking that the council was making a terrible mistake. Sarah looked at him in surprise. You did? Oh yes. Even then I noticed something the others missed. During the testing, when that technician dropped his device, 3 humans immediately helped without being asked. They didn't know the creature. They had no reason to help. They gained nothing from it. But they helped anyway. Keltar's body pulsed with warm light as he continued. Every other species in the galaxy would have waited to be asked, or would have expected payment, or would have helped only their own kind. But humans saw a problem and fixed it simply because it needed fixing. That told me more about your species than all the strength and intelligence tests combined. But nobody listened. Because nobody understood what they were seeing. We had spent so long measuring individual abilities that we forgot to measure the most important ability of all, the power to bring out the best in others. They stood in comfortable silence, watching a group of youngsters from different species playing together in the garden. The sight would have been impossible under the old system, where each species lived separately and rarely interacted. Keltar, Sarah said finally, can I ask you something that's been bothering me? Of course, and what if we're wrong? What if this cooperation only works because of the crisis? What happens when things settle down and species start remembering their old rivalries? The crystal being turned to face her fully, his body brightening with what Sarah had learned was deep sincerity. Do you see those children playing? Sarah nodded, watching a young Zethkari teaching a Vrex child how to make light patterns while a human toddler clapped in delight. That Zethkari child will grow up thinking it's normal to have Vrex friends. The Vrex will consider humans and Zethkari to be family. The human will never know a galaxy where species don't work together. In 20 years when they are adults. The idea of species isolation will seem as strange to them as cooperation seems to some of their parents now. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the Zethkari energy plants.
You think this will last?
I think this is just the beginning. Humans didn't just change how we fight wars. You changed how we think about each other. The old Confederation was an alliance of convenience. This new one is becoming a family. As if to prove his point, a group of mixed-species scientists walked past, chattering excitedly in 3 different languages, while their human colleague translated between them. They were heading toward the research labs where tomorrow's impossible innovations would be born from today's cooperation. There's something else, Keltar added. The assessment council is being disbanded. What? Why? Because it's no longer needed. Under the old system, we classified species and assigned them roles based on what we thought they could do alone. Under the new system, we assume every species has value and focus on discovering what they can contribute to the whole. Sarah thought about the long journey from that first day on Nexus Prime to this moment. Humanity had been judged the weakest species in the galaxy, suitable only for cleaning up after their betters. Now they were the glue that held the galaxy together. I have one more piece of news, Keltar said with what might have been amusement. The new Unity Council has made a decision about humanity's role in the Confederation. Another classification? In a way. They have declared Earth to be the permanent capital world of the Confederation. Not because humans are the strongest or the importantly, the